You are 7 years old, maybe 8. It is a Sunday morning and you are sitting in a low chair at the front of a church classroom, the kind with the carpet that is always slightly damp. On the wall behind the teacher there is a felt board, the kind with rough fabric that you can press figures onto and they will stick. The teacher is putting Jesus on the board. He is yellow-haired, the same bright yellow as a school bus. He is surrounded by children. He is reaching down toward one of them with an expression of absolute patience. The kind of patience that never gets tired. The kind that does not snap, does not look at the clock, does not have a hard day. Then she gives you the coloring page. Jesus is holding a bird. You take the yellow crayon. You press hard because you want his hair to be bright. You want to do it right. The bird in his hand is small and brown and looks perfectly content to be where it is. This is the Jesus you were given. Gentle hands, endless patience, children and lambs and small brown birds. You carry this image for years, decades, some of you. It becomes part of the furniture of your mind, not something you think about, just something that is there, like wallpaper in a room you have always lived in. And then, what if there is a text? Not a rumor, not a theory, a real document, copied by monks, translated into 12 languages, circulated across 3 continents for over 1,000 years. A text that tells you what happened during the years between the manger and the baptism, between the stable and the Jordan River, the years the church decided to leave blank, the missing childhood. And what if the reason you have never seen it is not because it is false, but because the child it shows is one you were never supposed to meet? My name is Nathan. I taught history at a Catholic high school in Evansville, Indiana for 12 years. I left because of what I found. Not all at once. You never leave all at once. You leave in pieces, each time the evidence points to a door the institution would prefer you did not open. The first time I opened one of those doors, I was in my 40s. I had been teaching a unit on early Christianity, the formation of the canon, the councils, the debates about which texts were authoritative. I knew there were non-canonical gospels. I had taught about them in the broad, comfortable way institutions teach uncomfortable things. These texts exist. They were rejected for reasons. The church made a careful decision. Here is what the councils decided. I had never actually read one. I want to be honest about that. 12 years of teaching early Christian history, and I had never sat down with a non-canonical gospel and read it as a document. So one evening I did. I opened the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. I want to be precise. This is not the Gospel of Thomas found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, the collection of sayings attributed to Jesus that gets quoted fairly often in academic circles. That is a different text entirely. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas predates it. It was probably written between 150 and 200 CE, approximately 150 years after the events it describes. Scholars at USC, at Oxford, at York University have all worked on it. Ronald Hock published the first major modern scholarly translation. Tony Burke at York University is the leading contemporary authority on the text. I opened it expecting something theological, something I could file under the category of rejected traditions that the church decided were too speculative, too mystical, too disconnected from the mainstream. What I found was nothing like that. What I found was a child I had never been introduced to, and the more I read, the more I understood exactly why. Here is what they never told you about the childhood of Jesus. The canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, account for his birth, mention his presentation at the temple as an infant, include one story from when he was 12 years old arguing with the teachers in Jerusalem, and then jump directly to his baptism by John in the Jordan River. He is 30 years old at the baptism, approximately. Between the age of 12 and the age of 30, the canonical record is silent. 18 years, not a verse, not a sentence, not a word. The church gave you a savior who arrived as a baby, showed unusual wisdom at age 12, and reappeared as a fully formed adult ready to begin his ministry. 18 years of development, formation, and experience erased, not even addressed. The silence is total and apparently deliberate. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas fills part of that silence. It begins when Jesus is 5 years old. I want you to hold your picture of the felt-board Jesus while I tell you what it finds there, because the child in this text is not the child on the coloring page. Chapter 2 of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. Jesus is 5 years old. He is playing near a ford in a stream. He digs small channels in the mud and forms pools of water, then directs the water into them with his hands. The text says he made the impure water pure, a small act of power, almost casual, a child playing with water the way children do. Then he takes clay from the pools. He forms 12 sparrows, 12 small birds made from mud. It is the Sabbath. A Jewish elder from the village is passing by. He sees the child making clay figures on the Sabbath, a violation of the law against working on the holy day. He goes immediately to Joseph, Jesus' father, and reports what he has seen. Joseph comes to the ford. He looks at the 12 clay birds. He says, "Why do you do what is not permitted on the Sabbath?" And Jesus, 5 years old, looks at him. He claps his hands. The sparrows become living birds. They cry out, they spread their wings, they fly away. Every sparrow gone. There is no evidence. Think about what just happened. He did not deny he had made them. He did not try to explain. He did not ask forgiveness or promise to observe the Sabbath more carefully. He clapped his hands and made the evidence disappear. A child operating outside the law, destroying the proof with another act of power. I want to stop here for a moment before we go further, because when I first read this, I had to sit with the disorientation. This is not a frightening text. It is a strange text. There is a quality to it that I recognized, after sitting with it for a while, as the quality of something true to childhood, not the sanitized version of childhood we give to saints, but the actual thing. A child with power does not use that power the way an adult would. The restraint, the theological weight, the consideration of consequences, these are things a consciousness learns. A 5-year-old, even a divine one, is still 5 years old. That insight came from J.J. Benítez. I'll come back to it. But first, I need to show you where this text goes next because it gets darker. Chapter 3. The same day, or shortly after, a boy from the village, the text identifies him as the son of a scribe, comes running through the area where Jesus has been playing. He is holding a branch, and as he runs past the small clay channels and pools Jesus made, he uses the branch to scatter them. He sweeps through the work of the afternoon without a thought, a child destroying another child's project. Something normal happens next, except the child whose project was destroyed is Jesus. He turns and looks at the boy, and he says, "You insolent, godless dunderhead, what harm did the pools do to you? Behold, now you will wither like a tree, and you shall bear no leaves, neither root nor fruit." The boy withers on the spot, immediately. The text is unambiguous. The child shrivels, the life going out of him, and he is carried home by his parents. Half dead. His parents bring him to Joseph. They are furious. They say, "You cannot live here with a child like this, or teach him to bless and not curse because our children are dying." Read that again. Our children are dying. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. The village has noticed. Other things have happened. Joseph goes to the boy and pulls his ear, the way a parent scolds a child. And Jesus says to him, "It is sufficient for you to seek and not to find, and you have acted very unwisely. Do you not know that I am yours?" He is 5 years old. He is explaining to his father that he is beyond his father's authority. Chapter 4. Jesus is walking through the village. A boy running in the street bumps into his shoulder. Not hard, not maliciously, just the careless collision of two children in a narrow road. Jesus stops. He looks at the boy who ran into him. He says, "You will go no further on your way." The boy falls. He is dead. The people of the village see it. They are outraged. They go to Joseph. Some of them say Jesus is a demon child. Some say he is something worse. They demand Joseph control his son or leave their village. Joseph takes Jesus aside. He pulls his ear again. Jesus tells his father he is wasting his time. 3 incidents in the same childhood. A boy who scattered his clay pools, withered. A boy who bumped into him on the street, dead. And yet, His sparrows fly. The pools became pure. The power that ends life and the power that creates it are in the same pair of hands. A 5-year-old's hands. You have felt this before. The moment a story you were told turns out to be incomplete. Not wrong, exactly. Just edited. The version you received was the one someone decided you could handle. This is the unedited version, and it doesn't make Jesus smaller. It makes him stranger, more real. I want to tell you what I did after I read these chapters for the first time. I closed the text. I made a cup of coffee. I sat at my kitchen table and I thought about a person I had known when I was younger, someone I admired deeply, someone I still admire, someone who, when I was a teenager, I would have said was one of the finest people I knew. Years later, I found out something about their childhood, something they had done when they were very young that was hard to reconcile with the person I knew. It was not violent, but it was thoughtless in a way that had real consequences for someone else. And for years I kept asking myself the question I suspect most of us ask in those moments. Does the adult erase the child? Does who you become cancel out who you were? I spent a long time with that question. What the Infancy Gospel gave me sitting at that kitchen table with my coffee was a different question. What if you cannot separate them? What if the power that healed the sick at 30, that raised Lazarus from the dead, that stilled the storm on the Sea of Galilee, what if that was the same power that withered a boy at 5? What if the difference between those two expressions of the same thing is not the power itself, but the person learning to carry it? A consciousness so vast it breaks the rules of matter, inside the emotional architecture of a child, before restraint, before understanding what it would cost, not a disturbed child, a divine consciousness that had not yet learned what human beings learn the hard way, by bumping into each other in narrow streets and watching what happens. I'll come back to this, but first, I need to show you the scene the title of this video is actually about, because what I have described so far is the pattern. The Zeno resurrection is where the pattern becomes something else. Chapter 9. Jesus is older now. The text does not give an exact age, but he is playing with other children on a rooftop. The kind of flat rooftop that was common in first-century Palestinian architecture, a gathering place, an outdoor room. One of the children is named Zeno. The text does not tell us how it happens, only that it does. Zeno falls. He falls from the rooftop. He dies. The other children scatter. They run from the scene because they know what will be said when the parents come. They know whose name will be attached to this. Jesus is alone on the rooftop when Zeno's parents arrive. They look at their child on the ground. They look at the boy standing above. They do not need to ask. They already know who they will blame. Now I need you to understand what does not happen next. Jesus does not explain. He does not express grief. He does not say he did not push Zeno. He does not comfort the parents. He does not put his hand on the body in the solemnity of a healer at work. He leans over and he says, "Zeno, arise and tell me, did I cast thee down?" That is the resurrection. Not a prayer. Not a laying on of hands. Not a word of compassion for the grieving parents standing there with their dead child. A legal question. He raises the dead to create a witness. Zeno stands. He opens his eyes and he looks at Jesus, and he says, "Nay, Lord, thou didst not cast me down, but didst raise me up." The parents, who seconds ago were ready to demand justice, now have nothing to say. Their child is alive, their child just spoke, their child exonerated the boy they were about to accuse. The text says, they glorified God. What else could they do? Let me stay with the forensic precision of this for a moment, because this is the moment Benítez identified as central, not just to the Infancy Gospel, but to his entire 40 years of investigation into what the church suppressed about Jesus. The first resurrection recorded in this text is not an act of compassion. The motivation is not love for the grieving family. It is not mercy for the dead child. The motivation, as the text records it, in Jesus' own question, is self-defense. Did I cast thee down? He needs the answer on record. There is a version of this that you can read as cold, even calculating. A child using supernatural power to manage his reputation. But Benítez reads it differently. And after 40 years with this material, I have come to understand why. A 5-year-old who withered a boy for scattering his mud channels was not operating with adult moral calculus. He was operating with the reflexes of a child, immediate, proportional, in the way that children measure proportion before the weight of consequence has been learned. By chapter 9, something has shifted. He does not raise Zeno before the accusation. He waits. He lets the accusation form. He lets the parents arrive. He lets the moment of maximum danger arrive before he acts. And then, instead of defending himself with words which would have accomplished nothing against the certainty of grieving parents, he creates the only testimony that would actually work, the testimony of the person who was there. 40 years of investigation brought Benítez to a phrase I have not been able to set down. The texts they banned were the ones where Jesus was innocent. I want to tell you the moment I fully understood what the church had done with this document. I had been looking at the condemnation history for a few weeks. I knew the text had been banned. I knew it had been classified as heretical. What I had not yet understood was the specific theological argument used to condemn it, because the theological argument turns out to be more revealing than the condemnation itself. Here is what the early church fathers said. St. Epiphanius argued against the text in the 4th century. St. John Chrysostom, one of the most influential theologians in the history of the Eastern Church, argued against it as well. Their objection was not that the miracles in the text were false. Their objection was that the miracles had occurred before Jesus' baptism. Think carefully about what that argument is actually saying. The baptism, in official theology, was the moment of divine commissioning. It was when the Holy Spirit descended in the form of a dove. It was when the voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." In early theological formulation, this was the moment Jesus received his mandate. Before that moment, in the institutional framework, no miracle performed by Jesus was theologically valid. Miracles before baptism were unauthorized divine action, a child operating outside God's institutional sanction. In 494 CE, Pope Gelasius I included the Infancy Gospel of Thomas in his Decretum Gelasianum, the official Vatican catalogue of texts rejected by the authority of the Catholic Church. The first systematic list of what Christians were forbidden to read. The Infancy Gospel was on it, formally condemned. The real reason, buried under the theological argument, is something I sat with for a long time before I could articulate it clearly. A Jesus who kills children as a 5-year-old cannot be the foundation of an institution that demands obedience from children. A Jesus who withers boys who cross him, who kills the child who bumps into him on the street, who raises the dead to avoid accusation rather than out of mercy. This Jesus is unmanageable. The felt-board Jesus with the yellow hair is manageable. This one is not. And an institution built on the authority of a manageable Jesus cannot accommodate evidence that he was in childhood, something the institution could not have survived. You are Zeno's mother. I need you to try this for a moment. Your child is dead. You have run from your house because someone told you. You are not yet sure what you will find. You are not yet sure what you will do when you get there. Your whole body is moving towards something you do not want to be true. You arrive. You see Zeno on the stones. You see the boy standing on the rooftop above. You know the story already. You have heard about this child. Everyone in the village has heard about this child. The boy whose pools were scattered. The one who was pushed in the street. Your grief has a direction now. You are still running, but differently. And then Zeno arise. The voice of the boy above, quiet and certain. And your child opens his eyes, and stands, and looks up at the boy who just gave the order, and says in a voice you will hear in your memory for the rest of your life, "He didn't push me. He raised me up." You are left standing there, with nothing. No grief that goes anywhere useful. No accusation that can survive what just happened. No way to be angry that makes any sense. Just your child, alive. And the religion you were given, the one that told you this child never existed, that his childhood was blank, that the years between the manger and the river were empty, and the silence the religion left where this story should have been. Here is what the church could not kill. Despite the condemnation, Despite the Decretum Gelasianum, despite Epiphanius, Chrysostom, every theological argument about pre-baptismal authority, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas survived. Not in a vault, not hidden, not preserved by secret societies in the margins of suppressed manuscripts. It survived because ordinary people refused to let it die. Tony Burke at York University, the leading modern scholar on this text, has documented the extraordinary reach of its survival. The Infancy Gospel circulated in Greek, Syriac, Latin, Old Georgian, Arabic, Armenian, Old Slavonic, Old Irish, Ethiopic, and at least 2 or 3 other languages. At minimum 12 languages, probably more. Over 1,200 years of circulation. Ordinary Christians, not scholars, not theologians, not institutional reformers, copied this text, translated it, passed it to their children, and kept it in circulation despite everything the official church said about it. They loved it. The church hated what they loved. That gap between the text the institution banned and the text the people kept is, I think, the most important fact in this entire story. Because it tells you something about what ordinary Christians in the first millennium actually needed from their faith. They needed a Jesus who was real, not sanitized, not domesticated into the patient, yellow-haired figure with the gentle hands. Real in the way that power is real and danger is real, and the consequences of being near something divine are real. The felt-board Jesus is safe to hand to a 7-year-old. The Jesus in chapter 4, who kills a child for bumping into him in the street, is not safe. But the people who copied this text in Georgian and Irish and Arabic were not looking for safe. They were looking for true. And then, in 2023, in a German university archive, a papyrus fragment, purchased at an Egyptian market, unidentified for decades, mislabeled as a farming manual, was examined by papyrologist Lajos Berkes of Humboldt University in Berlin. It was not a farming manual. It was the oldest known manuscript of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. 4th to 5th century, sitting in an archive, mislabeled for longer than anyone can say. The farming manual contained the sparrows. J.J. Benítez spent 40 years with this material, not just the Infancy Gospel. The full documentary record of the historical Jesus, the canonical Gospels, the non-canonical texts, the Roman administrative sources, the Jewish historians, the early church fathers, the condemnation histories. His conclusion, drawn from 4 decades of investigation, is specific and I think impossible to set aside if you take the evidence seriously. The church did not suppress falsehoods about Jesus. It suppressed truths that made Jesus too human, too strange, too real to manage. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas was not banned because its miracles were fictional. The church has never had trouble with miracles. Miracles it can work with. Miracles it can explain and systematize and assign theological meaning to. This text was banned because the Jesus in it operated outside institutional authority, outside the baptism, outside the sanction, outside the framework of an organization that needed its founder to have been building an institution from the beginning. A child who kills and resurrects in the same afternoon, who withers boys with a word and brings sparrows to life with a clap, is not an institutional founder. He is something stranger, something older, something that does not fit within 4 walls and a brass plaque. Benítez's frame for the Infancy Gospel, in his interviews and in the investigative logic of Caballo de Troya, is this: these events are not evidence of a disturbed child. They are evidence of a divine consciousness inside a child's emotional architecture, power that had not yet learned restraint, humanity that had not yet learned what it would cost. The same intelligence that would say, love your enemies at 30 was at 5, still learning what it meant to bump into one. The child who withered a boy for scattering his mud channels and the man who forgave the people who nailed him to a cross are the same person. That continuity, the full arc of a consciousness learning what it was, is the story the church found unusable. Because you cannot build a 2,000-year institution on a founder who needed to grow. You close the text. Maybe it is the translation you found online. Maybe it is a printed edition from a university press. Maybe it is something you are reading for the first time, years after someone handed you the coloring page. You think about the felt board, the yellow hair, the children and the lambs, the small brown bird in the patient hands. It is still true, all of it. I want to be clear about that. The yellow-haired figure with endless patience and gentle hands, he is in there. He is real. The Sermon on the Mount is real. The healing of the blind is real. The encounter in the garden with the woman who anointed his feet is real. The crucifixion is real. The empty tomb is real. None of that disappears. But it is not the whole truth. Somewhere between the felt board and the papyrus mislabeled as a farming manual in a German archive is the actual childhood of Jesus, strange and powerful and frightening and radically, incomprehensibly human. The childhood of someone who was learning, through the specific curriculum of ordinary days, mud channels and playmates and narrow streets and bumped shoulders, what it meant to be the thing he was. They hid it from you, not because it would shake your faith, because it would deepen it in ways they could not control. A faith built on the felt board Jesus is a faith they can shape. A faith built on the child who raised Zeno from the dead with a forensic question, who clapped his hands and let the sparrows go. That faith belongs to no institution. That faith belongs to the person who holds it. And the people who copied this text in 12 languages for 1200 years understood something the councils and the condemnations and the catalogues of forbidden books never managed to erase. The truth about him was worth keeping, even when they told you it was not. This is Nathan, Forbidden Gospels. You decide what to do with this.